Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Okay, so today we're diving into something that is literally designed to rewire global finance from the ground up. It's called ARC, and it's basically pitching itself as this economic OS, an operating system for the financial layer of the internet. But honestly, the most mind-blowing part of this whole architecture isn't just the tech, it's the engine driving it, the ARC token. We're going to break down the source material today to see exactly how this specific token is engineered to take everyday users and turn them into the exact people who sustain and grow the network. It's an absolute masterclass in driving massive adoption.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just to give you a quick roadmap of how we're going to unpack this whole thing, we'll start with the fragmented mess of today's finance. Define what this economic OS actually is, look at how they separate gas versus growth, and then get into the really good stuff, the ARC flywheel and tokenomics. Finally, we'll zoom out to what this means for the future of finance. So, Section 1, the fragmented financial system. Before we can really get why ARC is built the way it is, we got to talk about the massive friction that's just choking our legacy financial infrastructure right now. Think back, if you can, to the era before iOS or Android. Remember that? You had these mobile phones, they could make calls, maybe send an incredibly clunky text, but the ecosystem was a totally fragmented nightmare. You had hundreds of developers trying to build for dozens of completely incompatible devices, all with their own weird rules. Well, that is exactly what today's financial system looks like. Payments, lending, capital markets, they're all running on closed, siloed systems built literally decades ago. I mean, imagine the headache for businesses when a payment and a currency conversion, which are, part of the exact same transaction, settle days apart. Progress is practically gridlocked by fragmentation. Now, the mobile economy absolutely exploded when a shared operating system finally came along. The core argument here is that finance is desperately waiting for that exact same moment. Which brings us right to Section 2, ARC, the economic OS. Let's look at the proposed solution, this shared infrastructure layer designed to step up and actually be that operating system. So what actually is ARC? Put simply, it's a public, standalone Layer 1 blockchain. And actually, that is a huge distinction. It's not a Layer 2 slapped on top of something else. It is purpose-built, right from the ground up, specifically for institutional stablecoin finance. We are talking about deterministic sub-second finality. To put that in plain English, it means transactions are locked in permanently in less than a second. No waiting around, no takebacks. It also features opt-in privacy for those sensitive corporate workflows and, maybe the biggest deal of all, stablecoin native fees. It's meant to be this shared foundation where developers can build the next generation of global commerce without having to reinvent the underlying plumbing every single time they want to launch an app. Moving to Section 3, gas versus growth, the dual engine. To really get how ARC incentivizes its massive network expansion, we have to talk about its unique dual token setup, separating everyday transaction costs from actual network governance. So the crucial point here is how ARC solves a frankly massive behavioral headache for traditional enterprises. Usually, right, if a company wants to use a blockchain, they have to buy and hold these highly volatile cryptocurrencies just to pay for their transaction fees, their gas. Enterprise treasury departments absolutely hate this. It makes budget planning basically impossible and acts as a huge roadblock to getting them on board. ARC totally sidesteps this by using USDC, a stablecoin, as its stable gas. You just pay for transactions in predictable fiat-denominated terms. Boom, roadblock removed, making enterprises way more likely to jump in. But if USDC handles the everyday gas, what actually drives the network's growth? Well, that is exactly where the ARC token steps in. ARC acts as the coordination layer. It's this utility-driven asset engineered specifically to align everyone's incentives, secure the system, and supercharge that sustained network growth. And that perfectly tees up Section 4, the ARC flywheel, and its 5 pillars of utility. We're going to look at the exact mechanics that turn the ARC token into this self-reinforcing virtuous cycle. The first 2 pillars here are network activity and economic alignment. Basically, everything starts with activity, right? Transactions, usage, fees. That real-world activity directly funds the network's economic security. If you hold ARC and you stake it, you're essentially signaling your confidence in the network. And in return, you earn rewards generated by that very network activity. Think of it kind of like owning shares in a giant digital marketplace that you also actively buy and sell in. Because you directly benefit from the marketplace succeeding, you have this incredibly strong psychological and financial incentive to want it to thrive. You become economically aligned with the system's growth. Okay, the third pillar is governance. By holding and staking your ARC, you actually get a voice in shaping the economic policy of the very system you're relying on. You get to help set the rules. Then we have the fourth pillar, which is fee capture. And honestly, this one is absolutely crucial for the growth narrative we're talking about today. Network usage directly drives ARC demand while simultaneously reducing its supply. Basically, using the network permanently removes some ARC from circulation. By continuously burning tokens like this, the system creates this built-in scarcity over time. And when you mix that growing scarcity with rising demand from a wildly popular network, well, theoretically, it creates an incredibly powerful incentive for users to grab hold of the token and dive even deeper into the ecosystem. And finally, the fifth pillar, platform utility and an expanding relevant surface. The deeper you engage with ARC, like say you're a business transacting a massive volume, the more utility those ARC tokens unlock for you. We're talking reduced gas fees, preferential access to services, things like that. As that utility expands, the token basically becomes this sort of VIP pass that businesses desperately want to hold on to. That creates massive organic stickiness. Plus, as ARC keeps adding new features like cross-chain transfers, the value proposition of holding ARC just naturally expands right alongside it. Let's move to how this all builds in practice. Let's look at the fee conversion lifecycle because this is where the magic happens. Step 1. A user or a big enterprise pays their transaction fee in that nice, predictable USDC. Simple. Step 2. At the protocol level, completely behind the scenes where no one even sees it, the system programmatically converts that USDC straight into ARC. Step 3. That ARC is then split up. A portion goes to compensate the validators and stakers who are securing the network, and the rest? It is permanently burned. Gone. So what this means is that every single transaction, even though it's being paid in a stablecoin, directly funds the network security and puts massive deflationary pressure on the ARC token. That right there is the fundamental mechanism engineered to drive continuous growth. All right, Section 5, Tokenomics and Ecosystem Allocation. Let's transition to the hard numbers and see how this token supply is actually engineered, and more importantly, who gets it. At launch, the initial total supply is sitting at exactly 10 billion ARC tokens. That's our baseline. And establishing that fixed baseline is super important because it gives those big institutions the exact predictability they need before they commit millions of dollars of resources. But the real story, that's in how those 10 billion tokens are being distributed out of the gate. Now, what's really interesting about this allocation is the massive 60% dedicated directly back to the ecosystem. We are talking builders, everyday users, network growth programs, grants, the whole shebang. Circle, who built the protocol, retains 25% to support ongoing development and validator operations, and then 15% is kept tucked away as a long-term reserve for stability. But dedicating 60% to the community, that structurally proves a massive commitment to decentralization. And tying this right back to our core focus today, funding developers is exactly what seeds the applications. Those applications bring in the users, and those users generate the fees that spin that incredible flywheel we were just looking at. Now, this supply model is designed to adapt over time. Because let's be real, you can't just launch a brand new network and expect it to magically fund itself on day one. So ARC uses what they call a decaying inflation model. It starts with a pretty modest 2 to 3% annual inflation just to bootstrap the validators and stakers, basically paying for top-tier security while the network is still young. But as the network matures and those transaction fees start rolling in, that inflation programmatically declines. The ultimate goal is what they call inflation neutrality. That's the point where the amount of ARC being permanently burdened by transaction fees perfectly offsets any new tokens being issued. The network basically aims to become entirely self-sustaining just through real, everyday economic activity. And to manage this whole system, ARC uses a shared governance model. In the very beginning, Circle acts as the initial steward, handling the protocol iteration and the heavy compliance stuff, mostly because speed and determinism really matter when you're just launching. But as the network matures, decision-making power over the economic rules, the fees, the inflation, all of that progressively shifts over to the token holders. The philosophy here is beautifully simple. The participants who actually depend on the network and who have real skin in the game by staking their ARC, well, they should be the ones governing its economic reality. Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, the future of on-chain finance. Zooming out, it's pretty clear this architecture is already picking up some serious real-world momentum. I mean, just looking at the source data, the institutional backing for this network is staggering. For validators, you've got legacy finance heavyweights like BlackRock, Visa, MasterCard, and Standard Chartered.
There's also this massive integration with the DTCC, which opens up potential access to over $114 trillion in assets. That's trillion with a T. And beyond that, you've got apps and fintechs like PayX, Exlonet, and BNY Mellon listed right alongside DeFi leaders like Aave, Uniswap, and Chainlink. This level of Day 1 enterprise adoption is precisely what is designed to dump rocket fuel into the Arc flywheel. High transaction volume from these massive players automatically converts to Arc, funds the security, and drives the growth of the entire ecosystem. Which really leaves us with this final thought to chew on. We are rapidly entering an era where traditional legacy institutions and brand new autonomous AI agents are all converging on a shared financial layer. By separating those predictable gas costs from the actual network growth incentives, Arc has built a model that is engineered to perfectly align its users with its long-term success. The whole goal of this structure is to act as an unceasing engine for network growth, where Arc literally converts the people who use the network into the people who sustain it. So the big question is, as this economic OS scales up, will Arc become the definitive coordination asset of global commerce? It is a truly fascinating ecosystem, and for sure, one that is absolutely worth watching closely. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.